happen, and then it won't happen. Well, it did. So, in a sense, they didn't actually create it, although I understand many people on your side of life advocate of the advantage point that, oh yes, they actually had this agreement to be shot and killed at that age by their parents, and their parents had already agreed it. And the whole situation was a scenario waiting to happen because the spirit world had deemed it so, which in actual fact is a very sorry state of affairs to inflict upon anyone. So what I'm saying is that people who pass through violence, they don't want to pass through violence, maybe they create it themselves, maybe they don't. Situations of synchronicity, syncretic voices, are what tend to happen when a person who is fitting an aeroplane and fits a bogus part upon the aeroplane creates a chain reaction of synchronicity which is detrimental to all of the people who are riding within the aeroplane. Simply what happens then is that person faces the karmic voyage of what they have created and will have to be forgiven for that and will have to forgive themselves for it in the fullness of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, with what you said there, I mean, with the potentials of something like what happened to the Amish girl, was that something that was quite a prominent thing to happen in her life, or, you know, can the sort of less prominent thing happen? I mean, we obviously understand that there's no coincidences. Okay, nothing happens by accident. So,
but it does.
It does. So there is potential for.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, because if you are, let's say then, you are caught in Sichuan in one of the avalanches, is that an accident? Is it an act of nature? Did the earth mean it to happen? Did it have a conscious physical effect upon the earth? Was the earth actually waiting? Oh, I know, I'll make the earth shake at this time so that I can kill lots of people. It is a strange tale of events, but in actual fact, the earth's energy and the earth's spirit is not that aware of human beings. Human beings think that the earth must be, but they're like ants to it. And the earth's spirit energy is in fact completely different to anything that a human being may make manifest, because it's a completely different organism and a completely different species, a part of spirit, part of God. So that means to say what you are dealing with is on a completely different level, an altered state of vibration. If you are a person then who is trapped within an earthquake or a mudslide or something like that, could you say that it's in the path of coincidence or is an accident? Yes, I suppose so. In a sense, you could say, unfortunately, that person was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not a synchronicity pathway, because otherwise you would say, well then, obviously, synchronicity works both ways. It works negatively or positively. Either the person was unhappy and wanted to die, in which case it was a positive outcome for them to have gone through that pathway of synchronicity and actually be submerged in the mudslide. Otherwise, you would say it was completely the opposite. If it was a child that was 8 years of age, just fresh out of school, or was still in school, and their school was submerged by the mud, and 400 other children passed with them. How can you then bring about the true coincidence of what you feel and are led by into the pathway of synchronicity or even love from God? How does that marry into the whole conflicting situation that human beings try to grapple with their minds? It is quite simple, dear friends. Human beings put the rationale of this super situation of that its superior intelligence creates everything. I am saying to you, if you look at a whale or a tortoise or an elephant or a swan, a gorilla or marmoset, you will look at the same eye of God as you look into the mirror. The point is in the reflection of species, the mutation of that species, and how it is that life and death in the physical world is but the physical world, is not part of the spirit world. What happens in the spirit world is the culmination of journeys past, and how that spirit then is able to share its response in the consciousness journey, and how it is that the rest of that which is the manifestation of all life, creation, God, understands and is then creative upon that purpose.
Okay, that's a wonderful answer. With the potentials, I mean, how much is actually known in the future? I mean, I know obviously there's infinite potentials, but obviously having a much broader perspective, and obviously the higher perspective you get will become more the oneness, if you like. Do you have a more broader view of the tracks ahead, or the pathway ahead, or the potentials that could happen? And I guess the question I'm getting to is that the further something out in the future, the harder it is to know what's going to happen. But obviously the nearer it becomes to us in what we perceive as time, the more perhaps galvanised that is.
Well, that is not strictly true, because if that were true, then most mediums would be identifying the correct numbers of the national lottery.
Okay, so how do you see the future? I mean, obviously in the eternal now there seems to be, the concept that everything happens at the same time. So it's kind of like there is no time as such, and the past still exists. So how much of the future is known? Or how much of potential future is perhaps known? Or is it complete? We simply do not know it until it happens.
One moment. We have to, that is many questions all in one go. So to begin with, my dear friend, we have to take upon us the issue of time. And what time is, in the sequence of humanity, is only relative to how you exist and in relation to your earth. Linear time is the product of one and one. The law of proximity is what governs the product of one and one. So linear time is something which is human state and physical state. It also exists in other worlds as well, I have to say, throughout your entire universe known to you. But it's not the same time. So if you were looking at, shall we say, a certain star system, and that star system you would suppose then is governed by the same linear time that you are, it is totally incorrect, because in actual fact it would not be the same if you flew there, if you follow me. Because if you actually made the journey to that particular place, what you would find would be that the way in which you understood that place and the way that you understood that place in relation to your own planet would be governed by one set of principles, governed by your own linear time, but it may not be that the intelligence of that planet's own governance of time or what their linear state of control would be. So the law of proximity is governed by where you are from and is only set within the approximate value of your own particular system. So that doesn't mean to say that as you travel through the universe, that if you were on some kind of ship or whatever, that the sequence of time would gradually change. It wouldn't, because it's relative to your own state of being. Therefore, I'm saying to you that when human beings try to have a product of time in the spirit world, the reason why it doesn't work is purely and simply because as spirit, you manifest through the governance of time, because the law of proximity simply doesn't exist within a different dimension. The law of proximity only exists within your own given time field, which is the reason why it is that when you yourself wish to, shall we say, you make a journey, my dear friend Ian, and you go to the spirit world, you go to your soul group, and for certain events and parts of that pathway journey, what in fact happens to you is that it becomes elliptical, that you suddenly miss bits of it, and parts of it just fall away. It's almost as though you find yourself traveling through the universe, and yet there are great big sequences that you jump from one thing to another. And you do that because of how the governance of linear time falls away. Because your spirit in purity is moving through the universe away from your linear time field and taking your consciousness to the spirit world, which doesn't have a linear time field. That is why it is that when people say, oh, I have your father here, and he is struggling with what he is trying to say. And the reason why he's struggling with what he's trying to say is because he's in a completely different time zone. And actually, what he is trying to relate to is back within his conscious cell memory in order to